Marvellous stuff. Welcome back. I am Stanford Chidge. This is the Chelsea FanCast, and we are now going to do something we don't often do. We're going to do something quite serious because, as you may or may not know, we had a fantastic guy called Jon Darch on the what was really back in the podcast days at Putney Station, wasn't it, Pablo?
It was, yeah.
And he came and told us all about safe standing, which is the what we think on this show, and I think in CFC UK and on the Supporters Trust and a lot of other proper kind of bodies, is the way forward in terms of trying to get some sort of an atmosphere back into football grounds like we used to know it. And funnily enough, serendipitously this week, not only is my article in CFC UK this month very much about that issue and mentions John in dispatches, but also Daniel Taylor's excellent article in The Guardian from the back end of last month where he was giving us an idea of the progress that's being made. And this week, Man United have said at their fans forum that they're actually prepared to, the club are prepared to look at the idea of trialling safe standing, which I find very encouraging, not least because of what Daniel Taylor was saying. But just to give you a bit of a heads up before we speak to John, just to give you an idea of where we are now, a lot of the Football League clubs have actually voted in favour of the trials. 21 out of 22 of the Championship clubs have. And Aston Villa, Cardiff, Sunderland, Crystal Palace, Swansea and Hull have all given official backing to the Football Supporters Federation campaign. And as I said, Jon Darch is the guy who runs the Safe Standing Roadshow and that campaign. And we're going to be talking to him in a minute on the phone. But before that, we've got a video that the campaign has made which tells you all about safe standing.
Thousands stand in the Premier League every week and stewards are powerless to prevent it. Fans at Hanover 96 get the stadium rocking at every game, standing at specially designed rail seats.
Here at Hanover 96 there are 3,000 of these rail seats in the home end. That's 3,000 fans if seated, or if they're configured like this, 5,700 standing. Now that's great revenue for the club, the fans love it and it massively improves the atmosphere. If there's a European or international match here, quite simply a member of staff goes along the rows with a tool like this, turns that, and hey presto, it's a seat.
In Hanover all the supporters accept this, they like it, and we have no problems with this.
Some people fear about safety in England.
I think there's no fear here. It's much more security than on the other seats, because you have something to hold.
So you don't have accidents associated with this area of the ground?
In this area we have no accident, nothing.
Fans and clubs alike know that standing, allowed at many other sports like rugby grounds for example, makes for a better atmosphere. Doing so in low-backed seats does sometimes cause accidents, and it irritates those who do want to sit because their view's blocked. Campaigners in England want the authorities to follow the Scottish example and give permission to trial rail seats.
This represents an opportunity to introduce a new form of standing area that is so clearly safe, because you can't possibly surge forward or backwards like you used to. And at the same time, actually, it gives clubs an opportunity to make football more socially inclusive by reducing the cost of a ticket, and yet, even then, make more revenue overall.
One man on the pitch during the fateful game at Hillsborough, which brought the end of traditional terracing, would love to see rail seats at the club he now manages.
The supporters deserve the choice and the option whether they want to sit or stand, and we all understand what happened 20 odd years ago at Hillsborough, but things have moved on tremendously since then, and they now have a system available to them where they can safe stand. You know, majority of fans, it seems to be, stand anyway from their seats, which we know isn't altogether safe, so why not give them an opportunity to stand safely.
Season tickets for the standing area at Hanover sell out first, such is their popularity with the fans.
I've got a nephew, like 11 years old, that's so big. I can't take him behind a goal. He's letting my push forward. Always got my arm around him or something. Here, let me here. It's going to be safe, isn't it? So.
Everybody knows football fans stand. It's perfectly safe to do so. It's going to improve the atmosphere. Everybody that wants to seated can be seated in other areas of the stadium. Fans that want to stand can stand.
Every single club who has seen the demonstration unit we have in the UK of these rail seats, or indeed have been out to Germany to look at them themselves, as one or two have done, have all been positive. The range of interest varies from we think it's a great idea and it should be explored further, to at the other end, we would buy several thousand tomorrow if we could, but we can't.
Hanover's players at an open training session, surrounded by fans with whom they say they have a special bond, one made all the stronger because they can get the crowd up on their feet.
Absolutely excellent and very, very, very worthy cause. I think now we've got Jon Darch on the line with us. I think, have we, John?
Indeed. Good evening.
Lovely to speak to you again, John.
Likewise.
And I hope you're well.
I am, thank you. Yes.
And I know you've probably been very, very busy this week because I mean one of the reasons why I was keen to get you back on our show, as I was saying before the video, is that Man United have agreed to at least look at the idea of trialling just basically look into the feasibility of having safe standing at Old Trafford. Is that right?
Yeah, I woke on Friday morning and went to my computer and looked at my Twitter feed. And I thought, good grief, why are all these people sending out tweets related to safe standing? I had a closer look, and yes, I saw that the newspapers had reported, as you said, that they'd expressed an interest at their fans' forum last week, so that's great news.
I mean, it really is, isn't it? Because that article, that brilliant article that Daniel Taylor wrote in The Guardian the other week, was really saying that the problem that we have is that not enough of the big clubs, by which he meant, Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea, of course, were prepared to put their head above the parapet and, at least acknowledge tentatively that this might not be a bad idea. So, I mean, how helpful will it be if Man United get on side with this? Oh,
very helpful. I mean, it's been very frustrating for us. I mean, you mentioned earlier that in the Premier League, in fact, before the end of last season in the Premier League in April, we only had 3 clubs openly saying that doing trials would be a good idea. That was Villa, Swansea and Sunderland. Then we had the fortunate situation that the 3 that came up, Hull, Palace and Cardiff, were also already openly in favour, so that made it 6 in the Premier League. But the frustrating thing is that we as campaigners have had private conversations with a lot more clubs in the Premier League that we know are at one end of the scale extremely keen, and at the other end of the scale think it's a good idea and ought to be looked at further, but haven't been prepared to say so publicly yet. And for them to hear that a club like Man United is interested, that may encourage them to be brave enough, for whatever reason they have to be brave, and say, yes, actually, we think it's a good idea too.
What is it you think that the bigger clubs have got against it, mate?
To be honest, I really don't know. I think that there's obviously the sensitivity of Hillsborough, and one or two of them perhaps feel that it would be in some way insensitive to suggest having standing again. But there really is no reason to feel that way, because what we're doing, the legacy of Hillsborough has been much, much safer stadia than we used to have, and a much better attitude towards how fans are looked after in the stadia. But we can make them even safer still, as we all know. Fans at the moment, not least the away followings in nearly every Premier League club, including Liverpool, stand up in their thousands behind seats that only come up halfway up their shins. And that isn't altogether safe. So we can actually go one better. And yes, Hillsborough made stadia safer, but we can be safer still by giving those seats a built-in rail so that the fans that want to stand are standing in perfect safety, not just moderate safety as they are now.
Of course, the irony with Hillsborough is, obviously that a lot has come to light about that now, thankfully. But of course, the terraces were not to blame for that, but the appalling police control were. So, I would have thought that perhaps, Liverpool can move a little bit more towards it with that obviously now being complete common knowledge. So hopefully they might come round. Yeah,
I think the Hillsborough Independent Panel report really opened a lot of people's eyes. I mean, I think anybody who had read the Taylor report way back when, knew full well what he deemed to be the causes, but somehow over the passing of time, that had kind of got lost in the mist and the myths. And the Hillsborough Independent Panel report, I think certainly for a lot of younger fans and younger Liverpool fans in particular, showed them, yes, it wasn't standing at all. And I mean, I've been on looking at discussions about safe standing on Liverpool fans' forums, a year, 18 months ago, and as soon as anybody started talking about it, they'd be shot down in flames by other fans saying, how dare you even mention it? But after the Independent Panel report came out, they've had some very, very long, grown-up discussions about the pros and cons, just like you see on the forums of any other football club.
I'm very, very glad to hear that. I mean, while we're talking about it, maybe we should try and explode some of the myths surrounding safe standing. I mean, I've got 3 that I think come to the fore when I'm thinking about it. One is that it's not a return to terracing, John.
Absolutely not. I mean, as you've just seen in that video, it's nothing like the old crumbling terraces that there were at some grounds back in the 70s and 80s. The biggest difference being is that the worry that some people have about surging and crushing simply cannot happen, because you have that rail integrated into every single seat, creating a row of rails all the way along every single row. And so wherever you are in that standing area, you're never more than an arm's length away from a rail in front of you and behind you.
Another myth, John, that we hear, and I think this particularly emanates, I suspect, from a lot of the bigger clubs, is that it'll be, a decrease in revenue and a decrease in capacity. I mean, that's not true, is it?
Not true. A rail seat takes up exactly the same space as a normal seat. So the very simplest retrofitting solution, you take out old seat, you bolt in the rail seat, job done. In fact, the opposite is true. There is the potential, depending on what the rules might say in this country and the physical constraints of each individual stadium, the potential is there to actually increase the capacity slightly.
Excellent. I've got Pablo with me. You may remember from when you were here on the podcast
yes,
a long
Pablo.
time ago, but he's got a question for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
John, I was just wondering, is changing legislation the biggest hurdle to implementing this and the clubs getting on board?
I could talk to you all night about whether actually we need to change legislation. It's not against the law to stand up at a football game. That's why you never see a police officer arrest anybody for standing. When you go into the ground, however, you're entering a civil contract by buying a ticket with the club, and one of the ground regulations is that you shall not stand persistently in a seated area, and that is one of the terms, therefore, of your civil contract. Therefore, it's within the rights of the stewards to ask you to comply with that civil contract and ask you to sit down. And only then, if you get shirty with a steward, might a police officer get involved. But the law simply says that the grounds on a prescribed list of grounds must provide spectators with seated accommodation only. The law does not say that you must sit down at that seat. And take Cardiff City, for example. They have...
We did on Saturday.
So they no doubt let you stand, did they?
No. I mean, like you always get with the away fans, John. The away fans were all... They didn't have that many there, but those that were there were mainly standing up as far as I
I did the way around. But at Cardiff, they have an arrangement where one area of their ground for home fans is standing, and formally standing, not just tolerated and turning a blind eye. They've looked at it as a customer care issue. They have customers who wish to stand. They have other customers who want to sit. They've made a designated area for standing. They've agreed it with their local council. They've agreed it with their safety advisory group and with their police. It's signed off. That they've formally decided to waive that part of the civil contract that requires fans to sit down.
Is that how they get away with it then? Because, I mean, we all know that there's legislation that says it's supposed to be all-seater, etc., etc.
It's all-seater. The Cardiff City Stadium, obviously, is all-seater.
Yeah.
And that's what the legislation says. That is all the law says. The stadium must be all-seater.
So how can they get away with it then?
Because it is all-seater.
Because they're standing up even though there are seats there.
Right, okay, I see what you mean. So
the Act says the stadium must provide seated accommodation only. Those are the words.
Because from what I understand...
Anywhere in the Act, spectators must sit down.
From what I understand, I mean, I know this happened at Sunderland. Up there, the police and the stewards, basically, well, particularly the police, were reducing the capacity in certain parts of the ground where there was persistent standing. And this is an argument that gets... I mean, I've sat on the fans forum at Chelsea for the last 2 or 3 years, and this is the argument that gets thrown at us, is that we can't have you standing all the time because we're under pressure from the policing to reduce the capacity if you do, as a kind of punishment for it.
The reason they do that is because if you stand up, you are a wider person than if you sit down. If you sit down, you sort of hunch your shoulders together and you squeeze in between the person next to you, and you're a bit thinner across the body than you are when you stand with your arms free. And therefore, if you stand in a normal row of seats, where the clear way is actually quite narrow, you tend to go out into the aisle. And so therefore, standing fans in normal seats do encroach the aisles, and that's why when clubs know they've got away fans coming who will tend to stand, they might not sell the last seat of each row. With rail seats, because you have so much more room, you can stand slightly jagged, and therefore you won't go out into the aisles.
Well, exactly. I mean, clearly it's much safer to stand in a safe standing capacity as it is to be standing when there. I mean, a number of times I've bashed my knee and shins because I've been leaping around too much. Yeah. It isn't safe, and you can actually. I mean, and the number of times I've nearly gone 3 or 4 rows. In front of me when I celebrated a goal, particularly worryingly, and this is quite ironic, knowing how forward-thinking the Germans are in this respect. But at the Alliance Arena during the European Cup a couple of years ago, and it was very steeply banked, and I was quite near to the front of the upper tier, and it was a bit nerving. But anyway, Ross Mooring's got a question for you, John.
Hi, John. Yeah, I just wanted to know how is the roadshow going, and what exactly does it involve?
It's going very well. It involves a small sort of demonstration stand with 4 rail seats on it, because seeing is believing. To give fans and police officers, I had 3 policemen at Villa Park where I was yesterday, showing great interest. And in fact, their chief inspector took a photograph and tweeted it and told fans to come and have a look, and also tweeted definitely worth the trial. So it's spreading the word. It's letting police, football fans, football club officials, safety officers see, touch, feel, stand behind, actually experience as near as you can without going to a stadium what it's like. Because as much as we talk about it, as much as we show photographs, until you actually touch and feel a rail seat, you don't quite understand what it's all about.
Yeah, I saw. I was at Bayer Leverkusen for a Champions League game a couple of years ago, and I must say it worked perfectly well there. It was spacious and safe, and you couldn't fall anywhere.
No, you can't.
A couple of quick questions just to wrap up, John. The first thing is, I kind of depressingly wrote in my CFC UK article that I wasn't entirely sure whether I would see safe standing in my football-going lifetime, it being that I'm a man of a certain age. But do you? I mean, I have to say, when I saw the news about Man United, I suddenly had renewed hope. Do you think when do you think we might see safe standing in the Premier League?
Well, as you say, I think Man United being interested could be a game changer, because ultimately, if the Premier League, as a league, decide they're interested, then it will happen. We all know that Premier League runs football, so it'll happen. And prior to Friday, if you'd pushed me, I would say I knew 13 clubs who, if push came to shove, wouldn't vote against the idea of trials. Now that Man United are reported to be interested, that takes it back to 14 and even more. And the Premier League is a democratic organisation of 20 clubs. If 14 of them vote for something, that motion is passed. So you can see the possibility that it may even become, Premier League policy before too long, that they would like the government to allow 1 or 2 trials to take place. So I think there's a chance we might see a trial within 18 months. If we hadn't had a trial by the season 2015-16, I'll be dead miffed. More sooner than that, though, I think we'll see Celtic in Scotland install rail seats before this season is out.
You've given me renewed hope, John, that I might still be alive by the time that happens, which would be very, very delightful. Now, very, very quickly to wrap up, John, how can we as supporters help the campaign or get involved with the campaign and actually help to get this happening?
Urge your club, in your case Chelsea, but if any other fans of any other clubs are listening or viewing, urge the club to at least say, they might not think it's a very good idea for them, but at least say they think it would be a good idea in principle for 1 or 2 trials to take place. They can be elsewhere, they can be at Villa, we know they want to do them, Peterborough want to do them, Bristol City, my club, want to do them. The trials can be wherever, and just let's see how the trials go, learn from them, and then hopefully write the rules and regulations by which safe standing can be rolled out.
Brilliant, John. We will do our very, very best. I mean, we're on the Fans Forum and on the Supporters Trust, so we'll do our best to keep pressurising them. Thanks very, very much for coming along. Much appreciated, mate.
Great stuff. See you.
Cheers, John.
Cheers, John.
Now, very quickly, if you want to follow John on Twitter, he is at SafeStandingRS. And, of course, their website is safestandingroadshow.co.uk. There we go, up on the screen for you now, at SafeStandingRS, and the website is safestandingroadshow.co.uk. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant stuff. I love John. He is so passionate about that, and if anybody deserves to see that happen, it will be him. Now, we have to go for a break, but when we come back, we will be back for you. The return of You're On CFFC. I'm excited. So are you.